on site at Sankat Mochan Hanuman Temple, and those of you joining us from different areas around the Bay Area here, in our local satsang, and in our extended satsang, the whole world community that might be connecting in at this time. So we're continuing with our Ramayana Katha, our reading of the Ramayana, and we're at the 17th in the series that we're doing. So we're simply selecting around a 30-40 minute section each Saturday, and so it's this particular one will be the closing out of Balakan and the beginning of Ayodhya Kand. So it's a very, very significant turn of events that occurs during this one, and you can almost hear in some of the language, poetry of it, how it begins to turn from this very joyous phase to a rather ominous tone right at toward the very end. So as things start to really tell itself. So we'll go ahead and begin. Thank you for joining us again. So this is just following the joyous time of the wedding of Ram and his brothers to their wives, and just great joyous occasion that's occurring in the home of King Janak, Sita's father. So we'll pick up where we just ended the other day. Having shown everyone all possible honor, the king, whose heart was over-brimming with joy, visited the private apartments and beheld the princes with their brides. He gladly took the boys in his arms and experienced the thrill of joy, which nobody could tell. Similarly, he affectionately seated the brides and engaged with them again and again with a heart full of rapture. The ladies of the Gyneceum were delighted to behold this spectacle, and the heart of everyone became in a bowl of joy. The king related how the wedding had taken place, and everyone was delighted to hear his account. The goodness, amiability, nobility, the loving nature, and the splendid wealth of King Janak were extolled by King Dasaratha in a variety of ways, even as a rhapsodist would do. And the queens were enraptured to hear the record of his doings. After bathing with his sons, the king called the Brahmanas, the preceptor, and his own kinsmen, and having entertained them at meal, he feasted himself on a variety of dishes until a couple of hours of the night had passed. Lovely women sang joyous songs, and the night became a source of delight in soul enchanting. After rinsing their mouth, the king and his party were all given deluges and adorned with garlands and sandal paste. They looked most charming. Looking once more at Sri Ram, and having received the permission, they proceeded each to their own house, bowing their heads. The love and rapture, merriment and magnanimity, prosperity, the splendor and loveliness that manifest there were more than could be told by 100 Sharadas and Sheshas, Vedas and Brahmas, Shivas and Ganeshas. How then can I describe them at length any more than an earthly worm could support the globe on his head? The king then summoned the queens, and showing every honor to them all, admonished them in gentle tones. The brides are yet damsels, and have come to a strange house. Therefore, take care of them, as eyelids protect the eyes. The boys are tired and feeling drowsy. Go and put them to bed. So saying, he retired to his own bedroom, with his mind fixed on Sri Ram's feet. Hearing the sweet and loving words of the king, the queens made ready bejeweled beds of gold, and furnished them with many a rich covering, soft and white as the froth of cow's milk, and pillows more charming than words can tell. The bedchamber, made of precious stones, was decked with garlands and supplied with perfumes, lamps, consisting of bright gems and a canopy lovely beyond words. He alone who saw it could know what it was like. Having thus prepared a number of fine beds, the queens took up Sri Ram and lovingly laid him down upon one of them. On being repeatedly asked by Sri Ram, his brothers too retired each to his own bed. As the mothers gazed on the swarthy limbs of Sri Ram, so soft and attractive, they all exclaimed in loving accents, "How did you manage, dear child, to kill the most dreadful demoness, Adhika, while on your way to the forest? How were you able to slay those monstrous giants, the wicked Maricha and Subhahu and their followers, who were formidable warriors and counted none before them in battle? My darling, may God bless you. It was through the grace of the sage Vishwamitra alone that God kept away a number of calamities from you. Even while you and your brother Lakshman guarded the sacrifice, you were initiated into all the secret lore. At the mere touch of the dust from your feet, the hermit's wife, Ahalya, attained salvation, and your glory filled the whole universe. In the assembly of princes, you broke Shiva's bow, hard though it was as a tortoiseshell, or adamant as a rock. You gained the glory of having triumphed over the world in one hand of Janak's daughter, and then returned home after marrying all your brothers. All your actions have been superhuman, and were accomplished only by the grace of the sage Kaushika. Our birth into the world has borne fruit today, as we now behold, dear child, your moon-like face. Our prayer is that the number of days that have been spent without seeing you may not be reckoned by the Creator at all. Sri Ram gratified all his mothers by addressing sweet and polite words to them, and fixing his thought on the feet of Lord Shambhu, his preceptors, Vasishta and Vishwamitra, and the Brahmanas in general, he closed his eyes in order to sleep. Even during sleep, his most charming countenance gleamed as a red lotus, half closed at eventide. In every house, women kept vigil and railed at one another in auspicious strains. The queens said to one another, "See, friends, how resplendent the city is, and how splendid the night." The mothers-in-law then slept with the lovely brides, enfolded in their arms, even as serpents would clasp to their bosom the gems from their hood. At the holy hour before dawn, the Lord awoke, and the cocks commenced their beautiful crowing. The rhapsodists and genealogists sang his praises, while the citizens flocked to the gate to make their obeisance. The four brothers saluted the Brahmanas and gods, as well as their preceptor and parents, and were glad to receive their benedictions. The mothers reverently gazed on their countenance as the princes repaired to the gate with the king. Though pure in themselves, the four brothers performed all the purificatory acts, such as evacuating the bowels, cleansing the privates and the hands with water and clay, and rinsing the mouth, brushing teeth and cleansing the tongue, and bathed in the holy river, Sarayu. And having gone through their morning routine of prayers, etc., they returned to their sire. The king, on seeing them, clasped them to his bosom, and the four brothers gladly sat down on receiving his permission. The whole court was gratified to see Ram and accounted their eyes supremely blessed. Then came the sages, Vasishta and Vishwamitra, and were seated on splendid seats. The father and sons adored the sages and clasped their feet, and the two preceptors were in rapture to behold Sri Ram. The sage Vasishta narrated sacred legends, while the king and the ladies of the Gayasena listened. In the course of his narration, the sage gladly recounted in diverse ways the doings of Vishwamitra, that surpassed the imagination even of hermits. Vamadev, another family preceptor of King Dasaratha, observed that whatever Vasishta said was true, and that Vishwamitra's fair renown had pervaded all the three spheres. Everyone rejoiced to hear that, while Sri Ram and Lakshman were all the more delighted with heart. There was constant felicity, joy, and rejoicing, and days rolled on in this way. The city of Ayodhya was inundated with a tidal wave of delight, swelling higher and still higher. After fixing an auspicious day, the sacred strings tied around the wrists of the brides and bridegrooms before the wedding for warding off evil spirits were untied with no little felicity, joy, and merriment. The gods were filled with envy to see new rejoicings every day, and begged of the Creator that they might be born in Ayodhya. Vishwamitra intended leaving every day, but was detained by Sri Ram's affectionate entreaties. Seeing the king's devotion to him grow 100-fold day after day, the great sage Vishwamitra was full of praise for him. At last, when he asked permission to go, the king was greatly moved, and with his son stood before him, saying, "My lord, all that I have is yours, while I and my sons and wives are your servants. Be ever gracious to these boys, and condescend from time to time to bless me with your sight." So saying, the king with his sons and queens fell at his feet, and speech failed his tongue. The Brahmana Vishwamitra invoked upon him every kind of blessing, and departed amidst a scene of love that defied all description. Sri Ram and all his brothers lovingly escorted him and returned only when they were allowed to go back. The delighter of Gadi's race gladly went on his way, praising within himself Sri Ram's beauty, King Dasaratha's piety, the wedding of Sri Ram and Sita, and the festivities and rejoicings connected therewith. Vamadev and the wise preceptor of Raghu's race, Vasishta, once more narrated the story of Vishwamitra, Gadi's son. On hearing the sage's bright glory, the king praised to himself the value of his stock of merits, which attracted the sage to his house and won for him his favor. At the royal command, the people dispersed, while the king, with his sons, returned to his palace. Everywhere the people sang the story of Sri Ram's wedding, and his holy and fair fame was diffused through all the three spheres. From the day Sri Ram came home duly married, every kind of joy took its abode in Ayodhya. The festivities that followed the Lord's wedding were more than the goddess's speech or Lord of Serpents, Shesha, could tell. I know that the glory of Sri Ram and Sita is the very life and sanctifier of the race of poets, and a mine of blessings. That is why I have said something about it, just to hallow my speech. For the purpose of hallowing his speech has Tulsidas sung Sri Ram's glory. Otherwise, the story of Sri Ram is a limitless ocean, which no poet has ever been able to cross. Those men who reverently hear or sing the tale of the auspicious festivities attendant on Sri Ram's investiture with the sacred thread and marriage shall ever be happy by the grace of Videha's daughter and Sri Ram. Those who lovingly sing or hear the story of Sita and Ram's marriage shall ever rejoice, for Sri Ram's glory is an abode of felicity. Thus ends the first descent into the Manasa lake of Sri Ram's exploits, that eradicates all the impurities of the Kali age. Descent 2, Ayodhya Khan. May he, in whose lap shines forth the daughter of the mountain king, who carries the celestial stream on his head, on whose brow rests the crescent moon, whose throat holds poison and whose breast is the support of a huge serpent, and who is adorned by the ashes on his body. May that chief of gods, the Lord of all, the destroyer of the universe, the omnipresent Shiv, the moonlight Shankara, ever protect me. May the splendor of Sri Ram's lotus-like face, which neither grew brighter at the prospect of his being installed on the throne of Ayodhya, nor was dimmed by the painful experience of exile in the woods, ever bring sweet felicity to me. I adore Sri Ram, the Lord of Raghu's race, whose limbs are as dark and soft as a blue lotus, who has Sita enthroned on his left side, and who holds in his hands a mighty arrow and a graceful bow. Cleansing the mirror of my mind with the dust of the lotus feet of the revered Guru, I sing Sri Ram's untarnished glory that bestows the four rewards of human life. From the day Sri Ram returned home, duly married, there was new festivity and jubilant music every day. The 14 spheres were like huge mountains on which clouds in the shape of meritorious deeds poured showers of joy. The water thus discharged formed into gorgeous rivers of affluence, success, and prosperity that rose in spate and flowed into the ocean of Ayodhya. The men and women of the city were like jewels of a fine quality, bright, priceless, charming in every way. The splendor of the capital was beyond description. It seemed as if the Creator's workmanship had been exhausted there. Gazing on the moonlight face of Sri Ramchandra, the citizens were all happy in every way. All the mothers with their companions and maids were delighted to see the creeper of their heart's desire bear fruit. The king was particularly enraptured when he saw or heard of Sri Ram's beauty, goodness, amiability, and genial disposition. All cherished in their heart a common desire, and said in their prayer to the great Lord Shiva, would that the king in his own lifetime appointed Sri Ram as his regent. One day, the chief of Raghu sat with all his court in the state assembly hall, himself the embodiment of all virtues. The king was overjoyed to hear Sri Ram's fair renown. Every monarch solicited his favor, and the very guardians of the world cultivated his friendship while respecting his wishes. In all the three spheres of the universe, and in all time, past, present, or future, none could be found so abundantly blessed as Dasharatha. Of him who had for his son Ram, the root of all bliss, whatever might be said would fall short of the truth. The king casually took a mirror in his hand, and looking at his face in the mirror, set his crown straight. The hair beside his ears had turned gray. It seemed as if old age were whispering into his ears. O king, make Ram your regent, and thereby realize the object of your life and birth in this world. Entertaining this idea in his mind and finding an auspicious day and a suitable opportunity, the king communicated this to his guru, Vasishtha. With his body thrilling over with emotion and his mind filled with rapture, said the king, listen, O chief of sages, Ram is now accomplished in every way. Servants and ministers, nay, all the people of the city and others who are either in my enemies or friends or neutrals, hold Ram as dear as I do. It seems your benediction itself has incarnated in this lovely form. What more, my lord? All the Brahmanas and their families cherish the same love for him as you do. Those who place on their head the dust from the Guru's feet acquire mastery, as it were, over all fortune. No one has realized it as I have done. I have obtained everything by adoring the holy dust from your feet. Now, there remains only one longing in my heart, and that too will be realized by your grace, my Lord. The sage was delighted to perceive his artless devotion and said, O king, give me your commands. O king, your very name and glory grant all one's desires. The object of your heart's desire, O jewel of monarchs, is accomplished, even before you entertain the desire. When the king was assured in his heart of the guru being so favorably disposed in every way, he cheerfully said in gentle tones, My Lord, let Ram be invested with regal powers. Pray, command me so that necessary preparations may be set on foot. Let this happy event take place during my lifetime, so that all people may attain the reward of their eyesight. By the Lord's blessing, Shiva has allowed everything to pass smoothly. This is the only longing that I have in my mind. Then I will not mind whether this body survives or not, so that I may not have to repent afterwards. The sage was pleased to hear these agreeable words of Dasharatha, which were the very fountain of felicity and joy. He said, Listen, O king, aversion to Sri Ram makes one repent, while his adoration is the only means of soothing the agony of one's heart. Nay, he follows like a shadow where there is unadulterated love. The same Lord Sri Ram has been born as a son to you. O king, let there be no delay, and make every preparation quickly. That day itself is auspicious and full of blessings, when Ram is proclaimed regent. The king returned rejoicing to his palace, and summoned his servants and counselors, including Sumantra. They bowed their heads, saying, Victory to you, may you live long. And the king placed before them the most auspicious proposal. If this proposal finds favor with you all, install Sri Ram on the throne with a cheerful heart. The counselors were glad to hear these agreeable words, which fell like a shower on the young plant of their desire. The ministers prayed with joined palms. May you continue to live for millions of years, O sovereign of the world. You have thought out a good plan, which is a source of happiness to the whole world. Therefore, Lord, make haste and lose no time. The king was pleased to hear the encouraging words of the ministers. It looked as if a growing creeper had obtained the support of a strong bough. Said the king, whatever orders the great sage Vasishtha may be pleased to give in connection with Sri Ram's coronation, that should be promptly carried out. The great sage Vasishtha gladly said in soft accents, Fetch water from all principal sacred places. And then he enumerated by name a number of auspicious objects, such as herbs, roots, flowers, fruits, leaves, chowries, deerskins and draperies of various kinds, including countless varieties of woolen and silken textiles, jewels and numerous other articles of good omen, which were considered useful in this world for the coronation of a king. Detailing all the procedure laid down in the Vedas, he said, Erect canopies of all sorts in the city, and transplant in the streets on all sides trees of the mango, areca nut, and plantain with fruits. Paint beautiful designs on the floors, filling them with costly jewels, and tell the people to decorate the bazaar promptly. Worship Lord Ganesh and your preceptor, as well as the tutelary deity, and render service in every form to the Brahmanas, the very gods on earth. Prepare flags and banners, festal arches and vases, as well as horses, chariots, and elephants. Bowing to these orders of the great sage Vasishtha, all concerned applied themselves to their own work. With whatever duty the great sage charged any person, that latter accomplished it so promptly as if it had been done beforehand. The king adored Brahmanas, holy men, and gods, and performed auspicious rites for the sake of Sri Ram's welfare. As soon as the delightful news of Sri Ram's installation reached the ears of the people, the whole of Ayodhya resounded with festival music. Good omens manifested themselves in the person of Sri Ram and Sita. Their graceful, lucky limbs began to throb. Experiencing a thrill of joy, they lovingly said to one another, "The omens prognosticate Bharat's return. Many days have passed and our heart longs to meet him. Auspicious omens assure us of our meeting with a beloved friend, and in this world there is no one so dear as Bharat. The good omens can thus have but one meaning." Sri Ram anxiously remembered his half-brother Bharat day and night, even as a turtle has its heart fixed on its eggs. That very time the ladies of the palace were delighted to hear this most auspicious news, even as the waves of the ocean commenced their lovely sport on perceiving the waxing moon. Those who broke the news first were richly rewarded with ornaments and costumes. With their body thrilling over with emotion and heart full of rapture, all of the queens started preparing festal vases. Queen Sumitra painted with colored meal, lovely diagrams in various charming designs, and filled them with jewels. Overwhelmed with delight, Sri Ram's mother, Kaushalya, sent for the brahmanas and gave them gifts profusely. She worshipped female deities of the village and other gods, and nagas, and vowing them further offerings, said to them, "In your mercy, grant me a boon which may ensure Sri Ram's welfare." Moon-faced and fawn-eyed ladies sang festival strains in a voice as sweet as the notes of a cuckoo. Men and women rejoiced in their heart to hear Sri Ram's installation on the throne, and thinking God to be favorably disposed towards them, all began to make preparations. The king then called Vashishta and sent him to Sri Ram's apartments for tendering opportune advice. The moment the Lord of Rajas, Sri Ram, heard of the Guru's arrival, he repaired to the door and bowed his head at his feet, reverently offering water to wash his hands. He ushered the sage and paid him honor with worshiping him in the 16 prescribed modes. Then, clasping his feet with Sita, Sri Ram spoke with his lotus palms joined. A master's visit to his house, servant's house, is the root of all blessings and a panacea for all evils. Yet it would have been more fitting, my lord, for the master to have lovingly sent for the servant and charged him with the duty, for such is the right course. Since, however, my lord has laid aside his authority and showed his affection to me by calling on me, my house has been hallowed today. I am ready to do what I am bid, holy sir, for a servant is benefited only by serving his master. On hearing these words, steeped in affection as they were, the sage applauded the chief of Rajas, Sri Ram, and he said, "It is but meet, O Ram, that should say so, the ornament of the solar race that you are." Extolling Sri Ram's goodness, amiability, and noble disposition, the Lord of Sages, Vashishta, said, thrilling over with emotion, "The king has made preparations for the installation ceremony. He would invest you with regal powers, Ram. You should observe religious austerity today so that God may bring this affair to a happy conclusion." Having admonished him in this way, the Guru returned to the king, while Sri Ram felt uneasy in his heart and said to himself, "My brothers and myself were all born together, and together have we dined, slept, and played in our childhood. The piercing of our earlobes, one of the 16 sacraments incumbent on a Hindu, our investiture with the sacred thread, wedding, and all of the ceremonies have been gone through together. The only unseemly practice in this spotless line is that the eldest should be installed on the throne to the exclusion of his younger brothers. May this loving and graceful expression of regret on the part of the Lord drive away all crookedness from the mind of his devotees. On that very occasion came Lakshmana, steeped in love and rapture. Sri Ram, who delighted Raghu's grace, even as the moon delights a lily flower, greeted him with endearing words. There was a sound of music of various kinds, and the rejoicing in the city was beyond words. All prayed for Bharat's return from his maternal uncles, and said to one another, would that Bharat came with expedition and obtained the reward of his eyes. In every bazaar, street, house, lane, and place of resort, men and women talk to one another. When will that blessed hour start tomorrow, during which God will fulfill our desire? When, with Sita beside him, Sri Ram will take his seat on the throne of gold, and when the object of our desire will be accomplished. They all said, when will the morrow come? While the wicked gods prayed that some trouble might brew in the meantime. The rejoicing that was going on in Ayodhya did not please them, even as a moonlit night is not liked by a thief. Invoking Sharada, the gods supplicated her, and laying hold of her feet, fell at them again and again. Perceiving our grave calamity, O Mother, manipulate things in such a way today that Sri Ram may retire into the forest, relinquishing his throne, and the object of us immortals may be wholly accomplished. Hearing this prayer of the divinities, Goddess Sharada stood still and was grieved at the thought that she was going to play the same role with reference to the people of Ayodhya as a wintry night does with respect to a bed of lotuses. Seeing her downcast, the god spoke again in a suppliant tone. Mother, not the least blame will attach to you, for the Lord of Raghus is above sorrow and joy alike. You are fully acquainted with Sri Ram's glory. As for the people, every embodied soul is subject to pleasure and pain according to its fate. Therefore, you should go to Ayodhya for the good of the celestials. Clasping her feet again and again, they exerted great pressure on her until she yielded and set out. Considering the gods as mean-minded, she said to herself, though their abode is on high, their doings are mean. They cannot see others' prosperity. Again, reflecting on the role she was destined to perform in the days to come, when worthy poets would seek her favor, she came with a cheerful heart to the capital of Dasharatha, like the intolerably evil influence of the planet. Now Kaikeyi, Bharat's mother, had a dull-witted servant maid, Manthara by name, having perverted her reason and making her a receptacle of ill repute. The goddess of speech returned to her boat. Manthara saw the city decorated with festal music melodiously playing. She therefore asked the people, what is all this rejoicing about? When she heard of Sri Ram's coming installation, she felt distressed in her heart. That evil-minded and low-born woman pondered how mischief might be created overnight, even as a wily veiled woman who has seen a honeycomb hanging from a tree schemes how to get hold of the honey. Pulling a long face, she approached Bharat's mother. What makes you look so grave? The queen smilingly asked. She made no answer, but only heaved a deep sigh and shed big crocodile tears. Said the queen, laughing, you are a most saucy girl. What I suspect, therefore, is that Lakshmana has taught you a lesson. Even then, the most wicked servant maid would not speak and merely hissed like a cobra. Apprehensive of misfortune as she was, the queen said to her, "How is it that you do not speak? I hope Rama and his royal father Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna are all well." Mantara was pained at heart to hear these words. "Why should anyone, O mother, give me a lesson? And on whose strength shall I be cheeky? Who is happy today except Ram, whom the king is going to invest with regal powers? Providence has turned most favorable to Kaushalya." Seeing this, she cannot contain the pride of her bosom. "Why not go and see for yourself all the splendor, the sight of which has agitated my mind? Your son is away, while you are complacent under the notion that your Lord is under your thumb. You are excessively fond of sleeping on a cushioned bed, and are unable to detect the deceitful cunning of the king." Hearing these affectionate words, yet knowing her malicious mind, the queen angrily said, "Keep quiet now. If you ever speak thus again, expert as you are in sowing seeds of discord in a family, I will have your tongue pulled out." More to come. On that cheerful note,
Jai Shri Ram.
we'll pause.